Okay, I see a green record in the top.
Yeah, and then your zoom is here on top. This is your zoom.
Okay, back and forward. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so and then to stop, just push it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Give a nice hand to Michelle, who I'm sure you all know.
Thanks. I live in what used to be called the old Nersheimer house. Now that there's very few people that remember Miss Nersheimer, now it's the Acker house. So I've been there 41 years. But Mrs. Nersheimer had a house that did not have a driveway because they walked from here to the house. The children used it to, it was the music hall. They used it to practice their piano. They had a grand piano, and they also used it. I'm sorry to not see any of the Sheldons here. Jim Sheldon told me that downstairs in the basement there was an old I'm trying to think of the word, but it was a like turn of the century machine that showed pictures, and you know, it was electrical, and it was just a magic place to be, like a magic lantern machine. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And so I'm sorry he's not here because he told me about it. But it was a very dignified place to go to, so that the children were on their best behavior, I was told. Mrs. Nersheimer, Mrs. Barton's mother, was a very interesting person. She and her husband were old Shanghai hands. They started out as Austrian Jews and became British subjects in order to trade in the Far East. And they spent many years in the Far East, and they were one of the first theosophists. They were interested in the fusion of Western values and Eastern philosophy. And they were one of the founders, along with Annie Besant and that group, the Point Loma group. There was the Ojai group, the Krishnamurti people, and the Point Loma people. And so the school had also a spiritual dimension to it, because they were very interested in this. And Mrs. Barton was doing yoga in the Far East way back in 1890. She grew up doing this, yes. And they had a lot of journeys to India, and they knew India very well. The fireplace that I have has a special, interesting history of its own. Mrs. Barton said that her mother and father got it from the Empress Dowager of China for services rendered to the crown in 1898, and the matching batch of ceramics is extant on the cornices of the Winter Palace in Beijing. It has the the cornices have those golden lions. Well, those golden lions match my fireplace, and there were two fireplaces, and one of them is still there. And the principal of Topanga School, Mr. Menaker, told me when he went there that they were told that that there's a missing fireplace, and some American missionaries stole it. This was, 30 years ago when, the communists were still very strong. But it's there, and it has a plaque in the middle of it that reflects the interest in theosophy that the Bartons and Mrs. Nersheimer had, and it says on in this plaque right in the middle of the fireplace, Mani Padme Hum. That might be familiar to some of you. Mr. and Mrs. Gutmann, who some of you knew, were very connected to this school. Herbert Gutmann was a teacher, and he lived here in the boys' dorm. The boys' dorm. That was where Patricia lives. That was for all of the young men, and Trauta was living with Mrs. Nersheimer because she had had a stroke. So she was living in my house. So in 1961, when she saw my house, she just almost swooned because it had been so many years since she had seen it. And she took me to the entry door. It's not in the front, it's over in the side because it was made so that the kids could walk over from here, and it faced the Eden Ranch, the Barton School. She took me to the entry door and she said, right here at this door in 1942, an FBI man came, and he wanted to know about Herbert and Trauta Gutmann. And she said at that time, she had this very strong German accent. This was a lady who had fled Germany in 1933 ahead of the Nazis. And she had a very, very strong accent, which he apparently didn't notice. And he wanted to know all about her, so she just ran a scam on him. She just kept telling him how wonderful they were, and they're such good people. Oh, you have to know them. And she just went on and on and on. He never caught on. He wrote everything and went away. Yeah. Yeah, they had a lot of stories about the Barton School. He remembers running after the goats because the children, that was part of the idea of the Barton School. The children worked, and they grew their own food. They started the water boiling and then told the kids, okay, go and get the corn. The kids ran and got the corn, so it was really fresh. And the milk they drank was all goat milk, and all the kids learned how to milk. And Herbert Gutmann talked about how he ran after this goat that just wouldn't stay still, and so he had a lot of fun here. And he said that there were a lot of other refugees. Mr. Barton and Mrs. Barton opened their hearts and their home and their school to a lot of World War II refugees. He said there were so many languages being spoken here, which was a very unusual thing because in Topanga, most people only spoke one language at the time. And there are people speaking German, French, Hungarian, all kinds of languages. They were teachers. And he himself, Mr. Barton, spoke several languages, including Spanish. And I was told that he used to go see old Mr. Trujillo, Rosie's father, her father, to speak to him because he wanted to practice his Spanish. And at that time, Spanish was not as pervasive as it is today. And I felt rather pleased about that because it showed that he was a person who was very inclusive. A good thing, a good Topanga thing to me. I have to go to a funeral, and the funeral is of an old Santa Monica friend who was part of the Marquez family, who founded, who started out in Santa Monica Canyon in 1821, and Forrest Freed died, and we're going to remember him this afternoon. Rosie knows him, Rose Trujillo Wiley, so maybe she's over there now. Anything else? Any questions?
That was wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
From the Bartons and moved onto the property in 1950. She had a small child who later became my husband. And that's how come I'm standing here now. That makes time move real fast, right? She wanted her child to grow up in the country. And when she saw this property, she thought it was so beautiful that it was the closest thing to Eden on earth, and that's how it got the name Eden Ranch. At the time, Betty Lee was a pioneer in the health food movement, and she later became world famous for her study of nutrition. She traveled around the world and studied what different cultures ate and what diseases they had, and became world famous in this. And she brought a lot of things back to this property from all over everywhere. And so there's all kinds of interesting artifacts on the property yet. And at the time, she owned the world's largest health food store. Nowadays, there's a health food store on every corner, and you can even buy health foods in grocery stores. But way back then, health food stores were hard to find, and the people who ran them were considered to be health nuts. And Betty Lee used to be very proud to be called a health nut. And so she would commute, she and her husband John T. Clark would commute to downtown Los Angeles. It was on 3rd and Western, where they had this huge health food store. I first saw the health food store in 1967 when I traveled from college down here to meet my future in-laws. It was the biggest health